Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our second annual San Antonio Chamber of Commerce Women in the Military event. We've got a fantastic panel of amazing military women leaders, and you'll hear from them in a moment. But I want to start first by welcoming you, of course, and of course, thanking our sponsors. You know, the Chamber can't do anything without the help of our business members that in essence give us the ability to do things and are the gas in our tank. And so we've got several sponsors this morning who have given of their generosity and time and name to push forth this important event. And our presenting sponsor this morning is Booz Allen Hamilton. You'll hear from them in a moment. Our patron sponsor this morning is CPS Energy, and our supporting sponsors are both Port San Antonio and U.S.A. I'd like to thank them once again for their assistance, for their help, for focusing on wanting to really bring some light to this very, very important topic, and that is women in the military. You know, ladies and gentlemen, back in 1948, President Truman signed the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, which allowed women to serve in our armed forces. In 2017, during Texas's 85th legislative session, State Representative Victoria Neave filed House Bill 2698, which designates June 12th of each year as Women Veterans Day. And that is a day that we honor, recognize, and thank women veterans throughout the state. And by the way, June 12th is this coming Saturday. So in advance of this special day, we are honored to bring to you an esteemed panel of trailblazing military leaders this morning. Did you know that female veterans comprise 10% of the overall veteran population? And when leaving the uniform behind, they typically do not self-identify as veterans. We are here today to shine a light on our women in the military and to find out how best to support them in and out of service. From peacetime to war, women serve valiantly and lead troops selflessly while also striving for success in their personal lives. Military City, USA is home to hundreds of women veterans, and many of our great businesses are proud to employ women veterans from across a wide variety of industries and positions. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Matisse Wright Springer. She serves as Senior Vice President in Booz Allen Hamilton's aerospace business. Matisse began her career in 1988, serving as the nation's first African-American female naval flight officer. She logged thousands of flight hours in both the EC-130 and the E-6 aircraft. After serving in the Navy, she was presidentially appointed to serve as a White House Fellow at the Department of Treasury. She returned to government service a few years later as a member of the Senior Executive Service at the U.S. Department of Defense. Her current areas of focus include the Joint All-Domain Command and Command Advanced Battle Management System, Next Generation Data Solutions and Analytics, Organizational Redesign, and Digital Transformation. Matisse earned a BS in Physical Sciences and General Engineering from the United States Naval Academy. She holds an MPA from Harvard University and an MBA with a finance concentration from Johns Hopkins University. She currently serves on the United States Naval Academy's Alumni Association's Board of Trustees and is a member of the Academy's Distinguished Graduate Award Selection Panel. Matisse, we are so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us, and I will turn over the microphone to you. Welcome.
Great. Thank you, Richard, and good morning to everyone that's dialed in for this event today. And on behalf of the more than 27,000 employees at Booz Allen Hamilton, of which about a third of us have served in uniform, we're excited to be a presenting sponsor of today's event. Again, as Richard mentioned, my name is Matisse Wright Springer, and I am a Senior Vice President and a leader of the Air Force account at Booz Allen. I've actually been on board Booz Allen for about 4 months, so not a lot of time in the seat. But today I'd like to share a few thoughts around one of our core values that is really prevalent and one that I think of when I think about women in the military. And we actually call this core value Unflinching Courage. We define unflinching courage in 3 ways. First, by speaking truth to power. Second, by maintaining our convictions. And third, by bringing bold thinking to complex problems. And courage is really important to me, and it's been an essential part of the trailblazing successes that I've had in the military, and now I'm having in the private sector. Back in 1988, I graduated from the United States Naval Academy. About 7% of my Naval Academy class were women, and less than 1% were African-American women. After graduation, I entered the Navy's flight school in Pensacola, Florida. And at that time, there were these big Hollywood movies like An Officer and a Gentleman, where Richard Gere was the star, and Top Gun, where Tom Cruise was the popular actor. And I loved both of those movies. And I couldn't wait to learn how to fly because I wanted to kind of be like Tom Cruise and learn how to navigate airplanes to begin my naval career. But once I had successfully completed all my classroom training, I also had to do all the physical requirements, all the simulators, and all the work that was required. That's when I actually got a chance to fly in a T-34 aircraft with an instructor pilot. If folks aren't familiar with the T-34, it's a small two-seater aircraft where the instructor sits in the front seat and the student sits directly behind the instructor. Again, I was super excited for my first flight in this aircraft. The day of that flight, I remember arriving to the squadron early. I got to the ready room. I had all my publications. I had all my gear. I was ready to go and fly. And back then, this was the late 80s now. This was long before texting and cell phones. But back then, we had this big cork board in the ready room. And that's kind of how we communicated. You'd leave a message up on the cork board for a classmate or for one of your instructors, or in this case, the instructor had left a message for me, the student, that day. And the instructor that I was flying with was this Marine Corps major. He had posted a message on the cork board telling me that he'd be late for the flight, but to get out on the flight line, meet with the air crew that was out there, the crew chief, and begin doing my pre-flight. But he'd get there and try to make sure we had an on-time departure. So I did just that. I went out to the aircraft. My crew chief came over. We talked. I walked around the aircraft. We completed the pre-flight. We're out on the flight line next to the aircraft talking to the crew chief and just waiting for the major to come. So I had on my flight suit, I had on my gloves, I had my helmet on, my sun visor was down, I was ready to go. My instructor pilot, again, this major, he comes running across the tarmac over to the aircraft and he asked the crew chief, "Hey, chief, are we ready to go?" And the crew chief said, "Yes, sir. The student is ready. The aircraft is ready. Why don't you guys climb in the aircraft and get ready for the flight?" So I'm super excited. So I climb up the ladder, I get in the seat, and the crew chief climbs up behind me and starts helping me with my harness and getting strapped into the aircraft. Once he gets me all settled, he then reaches over to make sure the instructor pilot is also okay. The instructor pilot's giving him the thumbs up and telling him he's about to lower the canopy of the aircraft. So at that time, you know, things kind of got quiet. As the canopy's coming down, I could then start hearing through my headset and I could begin to start reading the checklist. And you know, as an aviator, everything is a call and response kind of process. So at that point, once the canopy closed, I raised my sun visor on my helmet and I started to read through the checklist. And this instructor pilot had actually never met me before. It was kind of a thing where the instructor pilots in the cockpit were not actually the same ones that you flew with. So when he heard my voice through his headset, and it was the voice of a woman, he had the most surprised look on his face, like he just couldn't believe what he was hearing. It didn't sound like Tom Cruise in his headset, is probably what he was saying. But what actually came out of his mouth was something like, "Oh no, I'm flying with you today. Are you blankety blank kidding me? Where is Ensign Matisse Wright?" And I kind of laughed and I was like, what is he talking about? And at that point, because we were both strapped into our seats, he was literally trying to turn around in his seat with his harness and his helmet to actually look at me, which made him look like a complete idiot because the harness kind of had him tangled up and his face had this look of surprise. And so I started laughing and I said, "Sir, yes, sir, I am Matisse Wright and I am going to fly this aircraft with you today. And by the way, my long lost aviation brothers, They're Orville and Wilbur Wright, sir. And I started laughing to try and make a joke out of it. His face turned bright red, and I knew right then that I needed to go above and beyond on this flight to help this particular instructor fully understand that even though I wasn't a man and I didn't look like Tom Cruise, that I still needed him to do his job, which was to teach me how to fly that aircraft and be safe in the aircraft. A few weeks after that flight, I ran into him at like a happy hour event. And he was standing there, he had a few beers, and so he had a little bit of liquid courage on board. And he came over to me while I was talking to a few of my male classmates. And he was very, very Marine-like, and he wanted to make sure I knew that he thought I did a good job on the flight. And he just had never flown with a woman or a Black person ever in his life. And at that point, I guess this Marine had probably served for about 14 or 15 years. And so again, I just laughed. Again, I'm a brand new ensign. He's a major in the Marine Corps. And I said to him, I said, sir, but you know what? There's a first time for everything. And I kind of laughed. One of my buddies hit me on the shoulder, and we turned and walked away and left the major standing there. So long story short, in 1989, I earned my wings and became the nation's first Black female naval flight officer. Again, this story and many of the stories of women in uniform, they really do demonstrate unflinching courage, courage to speak truth to power, to maintain convictions, especially under stress, and to bring bold thinking to complete any mission. As I mentioned in my opening, I am a senior vice president at Booz Allen. But what I didn't mention is that I am one of the first Black female senior vice presidents in the 107-year history of Booz Allen Hamilton. And like serving in uniform and becoming a first in naval aviation, and now I'm doing it at Booz Allen. And frequently, it simply takes courage to just do your job. So today, I'm responsible for some of the most complex, but really cool Air Force and joint military programs at Booz Allen. Solutions for these programs require a wide range of perspectives in order to be truly successful. Even with the most sophisticated technologies, if those technologies are not informed by courageous people that have served in the military and can challenge the status quo to strengthen our solutions, we could easily fall short of the successes that we desire. That's why I can't wait to hear from our panelists today. Each of them proudly wear the uniform, and they have courageous stories to share. But before I turn it over to them, I do have one request of all women that have served or are serving in the military. Can you please join me and register with the Women's Memorial? All you have to do is visit the link, womensmemorial.org, then click on Make Her Story on the main page. So far, about 290,000 women have registered out of the 3 million that have served. And by my count, I say that's about 10%. And I'd like to see that number go higher. So if you know a woman that served, please encourage her to log on and register. And because it's so important that her stories are adjacent to his stories so that the history fully encompasses all that folks have done that have served in the military. So again, thank you for allowing Booz Allen to be the presenting sponsor. I look forward to hearing from the panelists, and thanks again for participating in this event.
Matisse, thank you so much. That story was amazing, but it really just shows how difficult it is and all the things that you've gone through to get to where you're at today. So congratulations to you. I mean, I could picture all that you described in my mind, and it brought a smile, but it also reminds us that we all have a lot of work to do. And congratulations to you. We're grateful for what you've done, what you continue to do. Of course, Booz Allen Hamilton, thank you for being our presenting sponsor, and of course for hiring you to be an example and to push forward the ideas that you are. It's truly important. So Matisse, thank you. And we will put into the chat the place where people can log into the Women's Memorial and sign up, as you've said. So thank you again. We really appreciate you. All right, it is now my pleasure to introduce our panel members, our esteemed panel members. So I'm going to introduce all three of them, and then we'll take them one at a time. I'll introduce them a little more thoroughly, and then we'll give them an opportunity to speak. And then at the end, of course, we want to remind everyone there's an opportunity to ask questions. Our panelists will be with us for the full hour, and so the idea is to have you think about questions. You can put it in the chat, and then we can answer. We can ask our panelists, our questions. So our three panelists are Rear Admiral Cynthia Keener, Commander of the Naval Medical Forces Support Command at Joint Base San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston; Brigadier General Caroline Miller, Commander of 502nd Air Base Wing and Joint Base San Antonio; and Command Sergeant Major Chantal Y. Cena Diaz, Command Sergeant Major, U.S. Army Mission and Installation Contracting Command, Joint Base San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston. These women have paved a path for future women leaders. They inspire, they encourage, and they empower our young women who are rising up the ranks and choose military service as a career. And now I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, who is joining us from Florida today. And that is Commander of Naval Medical Forces Support Command, Rear Admiral Cynthia A. Keener. She is a native of Fort Rucker, Alabama. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Nursing from the University of Hawaii in Manoa. Her graduate degrees include a Master of Science in Nursing from the Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, and a Doctor of Nursing Practice from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. Operationally, Admiral Keener serves as a senior nurse of Bravo Surgical Company. She served as a senior nurse of Bravo Surgical Company with the 1st Support Service Group in Fallujah, Iraq, providing direct casualty care during the height of combat operations at the busiest role in the medical facility, in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Vigilant Resolve, which was the first battle at Fallujah. Admiral Keener maintains board certification as a family nurse practitioner and as an advanced nurse executive with the American Nurses Credentialing Center. She is a fellow of both the American Association of Nurse Practitioners and the American Academy of Nurses. We are excited to have you with us, Admiral, and eager to hear about your military journey, balancing career and family, as well as how you serve as a mentor and friend to many other women leaders. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate that nice introduction, and I really appreciate the opportunity to meet the other panelists, and I'm humbled and honored to be asked to join this event. So thank you very much. I want to just open with a few comments, things that aren't in my bio, get you to know a little bit more about me, because I hope that the opportunity for Q&A with the panelists will get after the needs of the audience. So I'll just add a couple of things. Sometimes people want to know, well, why did you join the military? How did that come to be? My dad was an Army officer. He served at Fort Sam Houston. I graduated from Churchill High School, but I actually spent my senior year in Guam as a dependent, an Army dependent of my dad. He was stationed in Guam for his last assignment in the Army. And then I got married when I was really young, and I married a sailor. So I didn't go into the Army, but I had always thought about a career in the military. I am the middle of 5 children. And I loved the adventure of my life, just being able to move all around. We had lived in different countries. We had lived in a lot of different places in the U.S., and just the opportunity to meet and mingle with people from all over the world was very interesting to me. And I loved different languages and just the different cultural exposure. So I always thought about a career in the military. And then having gotten married to a sailor, I joined the Navy after school. Like many people, I looked at opportunity. It was hard to pay for school back then. And so the Navy offered me an opportunity to get a scholarship and fund my college education, my first degree. So like a lot of people, I looked at the service as a place to fund education. And quite frankly, the beginning parts of service for me were, what's in it for me? I can get a paycheck, I can get school paid for, et cetera. But then a pivotal time in my life was going on that first deployment to Fallujah, Iraq. I was just out of my master's program by a couple of years, as a family nurse practitioner by then. I had 3 children of my own by then, and going into a combat zone and taking care of wounded people. And I say people because we took care of every casualty that happened upon our doorsteps, everything from children and women caught in the crossfire of war to mostly wounded Marines and soldiers that were engaged in, combat arms in Fallujah. And all of a sudden, through that life-changing experience and then more to follow, I realized that military service was really about service. And so I think for me, the destiny, that desire to serve, the desire to contribute, the desire to do something meaningful in the world was really motivated and inspired because of the uniform that I wear. And so I've continued that adventure. I still have a great deal of fun. I'm engaged with my career. I love every single day. I love the people I get to meet. I still love the travel. And it's just been a great, great opportunity for me to continue to do the things I love in a place that values those things. So serving our nation, serving our Navy, and certainly taking care of our combat veterans, our family members, and the warriors wherever we're called to serve. That's kind of how I'm inspired and motivated, but I look forward to answering questions from the group that's there and sharing this opportunity with the other panel members. So thank you so much again for that introduction.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And we definitely will get into some depth with the questions, but very inspirational and of course, not easy, right? Being in, and then I've never been in combat. So let me just say that, but just hearing that you had 3 children, you're in combat, you're dealing in this situation. Wow, big time stuff. And so thank you for, wanting to do this, taking the mantle to be in the military. Congratulations, great story. So thank you. And we'll hear more from you in a minute. All right, so we are going to move on to our second panelist. She is a friend and a great military partner, Brigadier General Caroline Miller, the commander of the 502nd Air Base Wing and Joint Base San Antonio. Brigadier General Miller commissioned from Officer Training School at Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama in 1994. She has held several command and staff positions at the base, Major Command, Air Staff, and Joint levels. Her command tours include the 1st Mission Support Squadron, 1st Force Support Squadron, the 379th Expeditionary Mission Support Group, and the 633rd Air Base Wing. Prior to her current position, General Miller was the Director of Manpower, Organization, and Resources, Deputy Chief of Staff for Manpower, Personnel and Services, Headquarters, U.S. Air Force, the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia. As 502nd Air Base Wing Commander, she leads over 8,000 people who execute 49 installation support functions to enable the largest joint base in the Department of Defense to function. JBSA consists of 266 mission partners, 80,000 full-time personnel, and a local community of more than 250,000 retirees. She also manages and provides oversight for major projects, facilities, and infrastructure worth $37 billion throughout Joint Base San Antonio, which unifies 11 geographically distinct locations. General Miller, we are excited to have you here. Thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. First of all, it's great to be here today. I'm going to try to see. There we go. Really great to be here today. I love these forums. I love to talk about, kind of my story and listen to everybody else's stories because they're just so interesting. I always ask people, how did they get here or how did you decide to go in the military? So appreciate the bio. I will tell you a little bit about how I ended up going into the military. I didn't go until I was older. Unlike Admiral Keener, I never wanted to go in the military. And because my dad was in the military, and so I moved around, growing up. And I used to just envy the people that had the same group of friends all the way through high school, grade school, and everything. And we moved every 2 or 3 years. And so I always said, I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to go in the Air Force, or never going to go in the military. So my path was a little bit different than Admiral Keener's. I actually went to college in California, and then I went to graduate school in American University in Washington, D.C. I got a master's in experimental psychology. And after that, I was working at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research for a couple of years after my master's degree. And I was doing some research and everything. And at first it was very exciting to be at Walter Reed and doing research, and, worked in a lab, and I had all my own, kind of experiments. But after a while, it became very, very routine. And I worked in a lab with a doctor, an Army major who was a doctor who chose research as his life work, and one tech. And so for hours on end, I would be there with the two of them who really didn't speak, and animals. We worked on a bunch of different, rats, pigeons, bunnies, whatever. But I'm a people person. And if you've ever done the color test, I'm an orange. And so I feed off of other people. So going in and every day, I was absolutely dreading going into work. I would hate Fridays because I knew Mondays were coming. And so I'm like, this cannot be my life's work. I cannot do this. So I called my dad, who had been saying, hey, you need to go in the service. I'm like, I'm not going in. And I was 25 at the time when I called him. I'm like, all right, Dad, I got to do something different. Tell me about the Air Force. And he says, well, go and, go talk to a recruiter. So I did. And I took the AFOQT, the test to get in. And then I just signed up, and I, was accepted to OTS. And so when I was 26 years old, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be the oldest, individual going through school or going through OTS. But I did it because I needed to do something else. And I figured, well, I'll do the military for 4 years, and then I'll figure out what I want to do when I grow up. And so I did that. And my first assignment was to Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska, which was actually pretty cool because my dad's last assignment was at Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska. And I actually graduated from high school up there. So I returned to where my dad ended his career. It happened to be my 10-year high school reunion. So it was kind of neat to see everybody again. But I went, and in the beginning, similar to Admiral Keener's story, it was about me. It's like, oh, I get to travel. I went to Just Mag Thai in Thailand. I did some TDYs. That was a 30-day kind of TDY. It was interesting, and it was fun, and it was just different. It was so different than being in a lab talking to animals. And so I liked it, but I liked it because what I could get out of it. And so it was good. And I'm like, okay, we'll do this for a couple of years. And then I got stationed at Langley, and before it was Joint Base Langley Eustis, but I got stationed there to do protocol, which I was okay with. But during that time period, we were naming the B2s. And so my job was to actually go and run the ceremonies for the B2s all over the world. So I did, Spirit of Indiana, Spirit of Louisiana, all of them. So that was really exciting as well. And that was about the time that I'm like, well, I'm going to stay in for a little bit. But there was also that time, you heard Admiral Keener talk about the switch. And that was actually the time when it switched for me from being about me to going, hey, this is a pretty big, it's bigger than me. It's absolutely bigger than me. And if at that time, I looked at we take an oath and we, pledge our allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. And I started thinking about that. And I'm like, this is bigger than just me and, getting to travel and doing all this fun stuff. I can really make a difference here. And my career field is personnel. So, throughout the years, I kind of tried to get out of personnel because I'm like, it's not that exciting. I want to do intel or something like that. But then I really started to learn about my career field, and then I really started to learn about the impact that I could have on people and on the airmen. And when I started to get into leadership positions, you could see, that you have these young, brand new airmen, they're 18, they're kids really. And, and you have no idea what life they came from. But you could make the difference. And then you could see it. I could watch them, and they came in, they were not confident. And then by, a year or two later and giving them different positions and jobs and how they just grew. And it was really kind of neat to see as a leader to go watch them become confident. And so to me, it started to become much bigger than myself. And it was like, hey, this is a really neat organization. This is a really neat lifestyle. And, we are in the profession of arms, and it means something, and it means something to wear the uniform. So I just, at that point, I was probably 6 years in, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay in as long as I feel like I'm making a difference. My family's willing to go with me, and that I'm having fun. I mean, I just want to make sure that I enjoy coming to work. And so 27 years later, I absolutely love what I do. This job here, I always get this, oh, that's the worst 1-star job in the Air Force, because it's, it's huge. And you heard some of the numbers, but it's wonderful. And basically, as you continue to move up in the organization, your sphere of influences becomes larger, and you can actually really make a difference in people's life and for the organization. And so just a little bit, this is about women in the military. And so they, to prep, they provided a list of questions. And I just want to address a couple of them and how it's changed since I was commissioned in 1994. I will tell you, when I was commissioned in 1994, I didn't see any women. My first job was in a maintenance unit. I was their section commander, which is basically I did their human resources for this 603 person unit. And there were very, very few women, maybe 4, 5. I mean, literally out of the 603. So you just didn't see them. And there certainly weren't a lot in leadership positions. The first general that I ever saw, first female general, was General Susan Pomerleau, who happens to be an air marshal here in San Antonio. And it was kind of neat I went out to dinner with her because I saw her in Central Market, and I'm like, oh my God, General Pomerleau, I knew you when I was a lieutenant. I met you, I escorted you around. But that was such a rarity when in 1994, 95, that time period, to see a female general officer. They just weren't around. And now if you fast forward 27 years, in AETC, Air Education Training Command, right here at Joint Base San Antonio, there are, I wrote them all out so I know that, but there are seven general officer females in the headquarters of Air Education Training. So every meeting I have, we're half and half. It's half female, half male. And so it's just, that has changed. The other thing that's changed, I think, is the fact, what's acceptable. We talk about dignity and respect always, and we want to make sure that we have my organization. I always say, everyone should be valued. It doesn't matter, we want diversity. We want all of that. When I first came in, I was in a maintenance squadron, and I would go to the break rooms, especially in the ammunition flight, and you would see pinup girls, you would see porn, you would see, the book on the coffee table of who to date and who was a good date, and to me, that was the culture that I went into. So that seemed normal at the time. Now, if I walked into an organization that has all, you just would absolutely not see that. It's just not acceptable. And everybody has a voice to say, you can't do this. When I was lieutenant, I didn't know that. I mean, I just thought, I'm like, well, that seems whatever, but I wouldn't have said anything. Now it would just be, you just wouldn't see it. So we've definitely changed in that aspect, which is good. I did not have any issues being a female. I was always given similar jobs to my men counterparts. And, so I didn't experience any of that. It's just the atmosphere. It's just what's acceptable. It's just what you could and couldn't say. You wouldn't hear, you'd hear jokes and derogatory type jokes. You don't hear that anymore. And if you do, someone's going, hey, you can't say that. So there has been a change. Again, I will turn it over to make sure that we have enough time for question and answer. I'm very interested in what you all, what questions that you have for us, for the panel members, and looking forward to that. So again, thank you very much for inviting me. I think this is a great forum and a great opportunity just to have a chat.
General Miller, thank you. Another fantastic, inspiring story. By the way, I'm an orange person as well. So we've had a chance to sit across the table from each other and chat, and we've gotten along very well. And so it's very clear that you are a people person and you care. And I'm so glad that you talked about how things have changed already in the short 27 years that you've been in. And I say that tongue in cheek, 27 years is not short, but sometimes it takes time. And having you there in a leadership position, of course, helps further all those changes. So thank you. And by the way, Susan Parmelo is a friend. She was a former Bexar County Sheriff here in San Antonio, and she's fantastic. So I'm glad that we've got mutual friends there.
Yes, sir.
All right. Our final panelist is Command Sergeant Major Chantal Cena Diaz, who serves as the Command Sergeant Major of the U.S. Army Mission and Installation Contracting Command at Joint Base San Antonio, Fort Sam Houston. She enlisted in the U.S. Army in July 1990. Command Sergeant Major Cena Diaz attended basic combat training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and advanced individual training at Fort Lee, Virginia, as an equipment, parts, and records specialist, and then reclassified as a religious affairs specialist in 1992. Command Sergeant Major Cena Diaz has accomplished all levels of the non-commissioned officer professional development system with honors and numerous military courses to include the U.S. Army Sergeant Major Academy Class 57. She graduated magna cum laude with a Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences from Mount St. Mary College, New York, and summa cum laude with a Master of Science in Education from Long Island University, New York. She has held a variety of positions of increasing responsibility and leadership during her 29 years of service. Command Sergeant Major, thank you for joining us. The floor is yours. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Good morning, friends and colleagues from across Military City, USA. Let me start by saying that I'm extremely honored to spend this time with you this morning. You've already had the opportunity to hear from really two amazing leaders, really three amazing women from the surrounding Joint Base San Antonio community. As you can see, these incredible leaders inspire excellence. They make our community stronger, and I'm so proud to share this stage with them today. Let's talk a little bit of history. Since the Revolutionary War, women have played a vital role in our Army. Currently today, the Army offers opportunities in 150 career fields to include cyber, artificial intelligence, healthcare, aviation, big data analysis, and many, many more. And that's a big change from when I joined the military back in 1990. Today, women make up 18% of the total force, and they serve in every career field offered. In fact, the Army has assessed and or transferred more than 1,400 female soldiers into infantry, artillery, and armor positions. Next month actually marks 31 years that I made the decision to serve my country as a soldier. Just 9 days after my 17th birthday, with a written endorsement from my mom, who's listening on today, I joined the Army out of my hometown in Denver, Colorado. I became a logistician, working in a combat-heavy engineer battalion. A month later, you look back at that time frame, a month later, Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm kicked off, and I knew then that I was in for an adventure. It was the junior ROTC program, though, in high school, where I really learned the value and impact of leaders investing in others. I always had a good work ethic, and I think I picked that up from my grandfather, and my mom. But I was already being introduced to some of the corrosives that are running rampant in the community. So I still credit to this day the JROTC program for literally saving my life and introducing me to being able to accomplish greater things by putting in the work and the effort. And that's something that I've carried in the military with me over these 30 years. I was a first generation high school graduate with unrealized potential. We know how dangerous that can be to our youth. I went on to join the Army and earn the first bachelor's and master's degree in my family. So I had the opportunity to serve alongside some incredible men and women in the military over the past 30 years, with multiple tours in Korea, Germany, Iraq, and operations throughout Africa. But one of the things I think about with the military that I really just love about the military, and there's a lot of things you heard from both the officers this morning, the incredible opportunities the Army has, or the military has for you. But one of the things that I love about serving in the military is the diversity. The military is one of the most diverse organizations in the nation. It's diverse in its people, ideas, beliefs, and skills. And I think diversity is what makes the Army or any branch that you decide to serve in the respective organization that they are today. Having also served as a religious affairs specialist, who I later reclassified and became a religious affairs specialist, the Army introduced me to many wonderful and diverse experiences. So I actually found myself teaching English in Korea, breaking Ramadan fast with Djiboutian partners in a mosque in Djibouti, Africa, as a Christian, participating in prayer at the Wailing Wall in Old City, Jerusalem, which is always one of my lifelong dreams to get out there, and preparing meals for high holy days at a synagogue that I worked at, the only synagogue in the military formation at the United States Military Academy. So I really have been blown away by the opportunities that service members have to inspire change and really just make a difference around the world. So you heard from the ladies who spoke this morning, and my journey is a little bit the same. My journey wasn't always filled with the exciting travel that I talked about or welcoming on. En route to the position in the island, I was actually on my way there. I got a note saying that my male supervisor didn't want to work with a female and had been converted to an aviation unit. So as you can imagine, I went through several emotions at hearing the news because I was very, very excited to take the position. But I was a young soldier, I was disciplined, and really I was ready to serve wherever I was called. But it still stung a little bit. So I ended up taking that position with the aviation unit with one thing on my mind: to be the best. I quickly earned a leadership position in that particular organization, and I became the first female to win the 25th Infantry Division Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year. So the unit that I was turned away from was about 4,000 people. This organization that I won title at was around 16,000 people. And I went on to win at the U.S. Army Pacific level against soldiers from Hawaii, Alaska, Guam, Japan, and Korea. But really, kind of the cool thing and the timing is it ended up culminating with a nominative assignment working at the Pentagon at the Department of the Army Staff. So I really believe in the old adage where one door closes, another opens. And really, from a spiritual perspective, I really believe that God's going to put you exactly where you need to be, and He's going to equip you accordingly. So women continue to distinguish themselves with selfless service, breaking barriers, and setting new heights to follow. So I really want to talk about briefly about three women that have really just broken some barriers really in the last 5 years. So Captain Kristen Geist was the first woman to graduate Ranger School in 2015. I'm sure you all saw that on the news. In June 2019, Brigadier General Laura Yeager assumed command of the 40th Infantry Division, the first woman to command an Army Infantry Division. And really, less than 2 weeks ago, on the 27th of May, Command Sergeant Major Veronica Knapp made history as the first female Command Sergeant Major in the 101st Airborne Division, and she was the first female of any active duty division to take that position. So we're super proud and excited to hear about that. So we have begun to see boundaries lifted and barriers torn down. And I'm just listening to the stories of the two previous speakers and just really amazed at the things they've done. But the Army has come a long way in expanding the roles of women over the last 2 decades I've served. However, I still feel like we have a ways to go. When I sit in the meeting and I look around, at least in the formations that I've served in, oftentimes I'm one of the very few females, one or two that I see. But I think once we start to make those changes, I really feel like something more comparable to what the Army 18% is, I really would feel like so I thought about how do we encourage women to join the military and leverage the service to find a meaningful career and future out of the uniform. I could talk to you about numerous quality of life programs, about pay, benefits, education, what we're doing for spouses. I could talk about the Army's the largest employer of female science, technology, engineering, math, or STEM professionals in the federal government, or that the Army's largest provider of scholarships in the nation, enabling scholars and athletes to attend colleges and become officers. But I think one thing when I look at and I really reflect on what skills that I gained in the military that I think will help me beyond or outside the military, and I'm going to be retiring in about a year from now. I think the opportunity to be able to operate in complex environments under immense pressure, the emotional intelligence, the leadership and managerial skills that you gain, loyalty, teamwork, understanding the value of family, diversity and inclusion, flexibility, speaking truth to power, as you heard about earlier, how to be a change agent, how to network, physical and emotional strength, confidence, and really the ability to communicate both orally and the friends that you make over the years that become your extended family are really good. So in closing, serving in the military after 14 moves, I didn't always go where I wanted to go, but I went with a servant heart and a teachable spirit and the right attitude. And I think that's incredibly important, that you bloom where you're planted with the abundant opportunities that are there for you. And I believe that every job will build upon the next. And never forget, and I have this little saying, I always remember that I've gone and seen farther by standing on the shoulder of giants. And that's the men and women that have paved the way for both. The contributions and achievements of women illustrate the strength of a diverse military, and I'm excited to know that there's a generation of young, talented, motivated women who stand ready to answer the call to service in one of our military branches, whichever branch you decide to serve. They will bring the leadership and drive to shape our nation's future, both in and out of the Union. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak with you this morning. I'm going to pause there and turn it back over to the moderator so we can have some time for Q&A. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Command Sergeant Major Cena, Diaz, thank you so much. Another fantastic story, a story of service, a story of leadership, and a story of wanting to have fun, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with having fun with the jobs that you have. And I certainly am blessed that way in all the jobs that I've had. But it's wonderful to hear that you all are enjoying what you're doing. You're making a difference. You're blazing trails. And you in particular, first generation high school graduate, and then taking that to the bachelor's and master's degree level. Fantastic story. Fantastic. All right. So let's now turn it into the question and answer. And we've had several that we've come up with here, and just one that I'd like to ask for you all. And we'll start in the reverse order. We'll start with Command Sergeant Major Cena Diaz, and then we'll go with General Miller, and then Admiral Keener. Admiral Keener talked about the fact that she had 3 kids when she was deployed. How about each of you can tell us just a little bit about your family and how have you been able, or if you have one, and then how have you been able to juggle that and still and be successful and do the things that you've done. So why don't we start with Command Sergeant Major Cena Diaz.
Richard, thank you. That's a great question, because I think it's one of the things a lot of people struggle with in joining the military. We really have found that that's a big thing, and I've heard in recruiting that they oftentimes don't want to leave the family and take that job. For me, I happen to be dual military, and I don't have children, but being dual military has been challenging because I always struggle with not wanting to hold my spouse back from opportunities. So it's like I get these jobs, my spouse, kind of move around. We've been doing this our entire military career, trying to make the best out of the opportunity. But the Army, at least speaking from the Army perspective, has been very gracious in that they have done their best to try and make it so the families can stay together. The Army's #1 priority is people first. So there are a lot of programs put in place to really just take care of family members, take care of children. If you have exceptional family member issues, just put systems in place to kind of help us. Because we realize that if you don't take care of the people, then the mission's not going to the military, I think, has really done an incredible job for me, for my soldiers, for the people I've served with, and just make sure that we are taking care of family members. And I even see it now during COVID. A lot of people had to work from home, or child care centers were shut down. The military just went out of the way to make sure that we're just taking care of that family, that core unit. And it's just been a blessing for me. I'm going to go to projects. I know the ladies and with the children, they probably have some incredible things to add. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the question.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. General Miller, tell us a little bit about your family and the juggling.
Sure. Yeah, I get this question a lot. And I was dual military for a long time too. My husband's a retired colonel. He retired about, 8 years ago now, I think. I can't remember. But anyway, so when we were both active duty, very similar, how do you juggle which assignment is priority? And he was higher ranking than me. So for a while, I would follow his assignment. And then it was very clear that he was going to be retiring. And so then my career sort of took over. But I have a 12-year-old. I have a 4-year-old and a 12-year-old. And so when the 12-year-old came along, I was in squadron command. And so, and my husband was, he had a very big job with DIA. And so it is very difficult to juggle. And because we all want to be successful. We all want to make sure that we give it all to our work, but family's as important. So what my husband and I did early on was we would kind of look at the week or look at the month and go, okay, what do you have? What, whose meetings, for lack of a better word, were more important, so they could, so we could go and get our son. But after a while, you realize that I was spending more and more time at work. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So my husband and I actually sat down and I'm like, okay, we can't do this anymore. I have to make, the family has to be a priority. And so now what I do is that if there is something going on, like if my son has a swim meet or a baseball game or a piano lesson or whatever, I make it a priority to be there. And the other thing that I do is, and so I know that the work will always be there. And the other thing that I will tell you is have very frank and open conversations with your leadership, like with my boss. I say, hey, I've got a husband and son, and he's a young son. And so he's doing all this stuff and I want to be there. I want to be part of his life. I want to make sure that he doesn't go, yeah, my mom was never there. So I will leave work early and go to his games, and I will do that. And then I will finish up my work at home. I mean, actually having the platforms now that we can do some work, after he goes to bed, I'll do some work, or I'll come in early. And so I just make it, I make them a priority. Now, there are times when work has to be a priority. And so we've got a really good balance to do that. But I think what I want to make sure is that at the end of this journey, wherever that will be, I don't know how long I'll stay in, that I'm not by myself in some, apartment. I want to make sure that that my family's there with me. And so I think I mentioned it, but again, the reason, 3 things that I'll continue to serve is if I think I'm making a difference, if I'm having fun and my family's willing to go along. And they're not going to be willing to go along if I don't make them a priority. So I just look at the schedule, and then the other thing I do is I schedule time in my calendar to go take Brian to swim practice. So it's actually on the calendar. So I leave and I know that it's my day to go take him, and we have time to, just chat. And then I'll sit there while he's swimming and I'll do some work. But you cannot be all work, or you lose your focus. So that's how I do it. And I'm sure Admiral Keener has 3 children, and she did it when she was younger. So it'd be interesting to see how she balanced it.
Excellent. Well, General Miller, one of the things that that you said, that you plan, and that's very important. But I think the thing that to me seems more obvious, very much like the story you talked about when you went into the squadron room and those pictures were there. Things have changed, right? And now the ability for the boss, if you will, whatever the boss is, to understand that people need flexibility in their lives, right? It's not, 8 hours, you're stuck here, and that's, a good manager, a good boss says, of course you've got to go home and do whatever. You got to take your grandma to the doctor, or a kid, one of your children gets sick. That is much more common now than certainly when I first started in my career. And so I think that's that evolution that you talked about and how things are changing. And it's just kind of, that's what we do, right? We allow people to have that flexibility because we have our own issues like that too. And we want the flexibility. So I think that's just kind of a function of how things are going.
I think that's true. And, the other thing I think that is going to help in this area is COVID. I mean, which seems crazy, right? But I mean, I always say, if you've been in the service for as long as I have, so I was here during 9/11, actually at the Pentagon. So that changed the way we did business. Absolutely. It was before and after. And now you kind of go and you're kind of on a glide slope. And then we've got COVID. And now we're like, hey, you can telework, you can, and so I think that gives us flexibility, not only as leaders, but as individuals to go, hey, I've got this doctor's appointment or whatever, but I'll work from home. And what we've seen is that productivity doesn't go down. I will tell you that the industry, big business, they figured this out a long time ago. The military is very, they're rooted in kind of how they've always done things a little bit. And so this has really jump-started going, hey, there's technology out there that we can use. So, and I agree that the leaders that I worked back in 94, 95, you wouldn't have those conversations. It just wouldn't happen. Now, first of all, a lot of people have children older, and so they understand, and you got to juggle. And I just think that we've come a long way there. So I'll stop talking so Cindy can chat.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. Admiral Keener, yes, Admiral Keener, tell me, you talked about your 3 kids. Tell us a little bit about the juggling and the plate spinning and all that we're all talking about.
Well, like Caroline, my husband was also active duty, like I had talked about, and he retired in 2005 as a CWO4, and that was right after I'd come back from Fallujah, and it became clear he was a Navy line officer, so he was frequently out and in doing deployments with the fleet, and so all of a sudden we had that reality check of, okay, there is the real possibility that we could both get deployed at the same time. And that was a threat to our family that we hadn't really seen before. And so we made the decision that he would retire at that point because I was earlier in my career and, had more potential. He was just closer to the end of his available opportunity. So he got out in 2005. I have 3 children. They range in age from 35 to 24. So they've all gone through and graduated college. I get this question all the time. Work-life balance, how do you do it? Unlike Caroline, we did not plan at all. We reacted to the crisis of the moment. Okay, the kids are sick. Who's going to take care of them today? Well, I've got patients to see. I can't. So we would have a battle every morning, and I don't know how it got resolved, but somehow it did. And we figured it out over the years. But one thing I will tell you, and this is deliberate for me, is, it's that acknowledgement that I'm here by choice. This is still a volunteer force. And so I get a vote. And I will tell you, and I tell others, never, ever, ever let your family be in the wake of a career that on the surface looks successful, but you've failed in that other big domain and aspect of your life. I hear sometimes those retirement speeches that are filled with regret, regret about things that didn't work out, people who didn't prioritize those things that are really most valuable. And you have to be deliberate in your focus if you mean it when you say my family is the most important thing. It is. So self-preservation, taking care of myself, cultivates that confidence, that resilience, that energy, that enthusiasm, that aspiration, all of those positive things that motivate me individually also have become those examples that I've set with my family for my children. There are a lot of moms that I talk to who really wrangle with a lot of guilt, guilt about leaving, guilt about absence, feeling tugged and torn and pulled in a lot of different directions. And I've really taken a very different approach to that. I don't have guilt. I don't do regret. I make deliberate choices going forward with the goal of never looking back with regret. And in that, I think I've been able to parent children who have acquired the skills that are essential for success in the world today. They're adaptive, they're flexible, they're resilient, they can go with the changes that life is going to bring. They overcome challenges and setbacks. They understand failure is just growth. It's just a temporary setback that means you have to acquire new skills or find new partners to work with. But really that whole idea of adaptation and flexibility in the world is something that I think I've taught my children. The experiences that I've had, the diversity has come up in a lot of different conversations, but the exposure to cultures, looking at religions, looking at women in different cultures, spending a year in Afghanistan, working with Afghan government officials and partnering within the Afghan government to counter the insurgency, quite frankly, and to rebuild war-torn provinces. Those experiences are things that your children don't have to go through, but you can absolutely recruit the lessons, tell the stories. I think women are phenomenal storytellers. So I share those stories, and it gives my kids things to think about and ways to view the world and integrate the stories that have been mine, but also theirs, because they've been in this life with us. So it's an adventure. You know, they've all had very different experiences, but ultimately I think that they see both me and my husband as role models. And we wouldn't be successful if we didn't have that network of family, you know, beyond our own core family, but also the military family and that whole just safety net of partners and backups that help you get through those things. Friends you can call on in a pinch, someone who can watch your kid or your cat or any of the other challenges, and knowing that network is out there and available to you. Rich, I know I went over myself 2 minutes. I've got to run and sign off, or I won't be able to make my next meeting. But I love this forum, so I'll be signing off. But I just want to say thank you to you, to Matisse, to Command Sergeant Major General Miller. Thank you so much, and also the sponsors who helped set up the event. So thank you for letting me participate. This has been a real pleasure for me.
Admiral Keener, thank you. You're a fantastic leader. You're a wonderful person, and clearly you've got fantastic children that are going to make you proud. So you make us all proud by serving.
You were in the military.
All right. Well, there you go.
We also replace ourselves in the military. You know, that's really kind of a statistic that's out there, is that we tend to replace ourselves because, you know, we inspire our kids and they do this lifestyle also. So one Navy, one Air Force. We've got almost all the services covered. So take care, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Be safe.
All right. Thanks again. And General Miller, thank you also. Fantastic story. Great to hear more and for people to understand who you are and what you've done. Wonderful. And Command Sergeant Major Cena Diaz, amazing story too. You all are inspirations. You know, I've been doing this job for 14 years. And I've had many events like this, but I can tell you, this has been one of the most rewarding. And by the way, one of the ones that's gone so fast. You know, we only had one question that we were able to ask, but it was so engaging. And I just want to say thank you. Thanks for spending your time with us. It's been great. You both are to be congratulated, as is Admiral Keener. Keep up the good work, and thank you for joining us. We're proud that you're representing us in the military.
Thank you. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate all of you. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say thank you for joining us. We've come to the end of our time. I want to thank my team for helping put this event together. These things are not easy, particularly when there's a lot of intricacies when you're doing it on the computer. The team cares, they're focused, and they are awesome. And I want to say thank you. And again, to our panelists and all the people listening, military life is incredibly important, and it's important for us to celebrate those leaders. And today we're of course raising up women leaders and saying thank you. Thank you for struggling, and thanks for taking that step to keep us safe. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we say thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon. Goodbye.